The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
I defy anyone to tell me they saw the college football playoff playing out like this. It just doesn't half seem possible that there's only one SEC team still alive, and it was a Big 12 team not that long ago. So bizarre times in the college football playoff, as I think we have to take a look at the SEC. Was it down? I think clearly it was. Coming up, today's tough question: does Tennessee have to beat Georgia at their own game? So the thinking was earlier that Josh Heupel would have this exciting offense, that he would have this culture, and it would be different from Georgia. But I'm not so sure that Tennessee doesn't have to just beat Georgia on the recruiting trail straight up. We'll talk about that and why. Has Tennessee's recruiting been overrated? Obviously, we're waiting on the Mike Matthews decision we hope to have before the end of the program. Vols in the transfer portal. We've got some news that we want to share with you this day in Tennessee sports history. Ollie Lane will join us. College football playoff takeaways at John Calipari. We'll venture into Thompson Bowling Arena this weekend. Is he the most hated basketball coach by Tennessee fans in history? I don't think it's close. Lady Vols win in their opener against A&M. We'll discuss that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. That is banksandjones.com. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. I don't know if I want to make a joke about Penn State playing Notre Dame, Penn State playing the representative of the Catholic Church. I don't know if I should go there.
I would appreciate it. You did not. Today's tough question brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage, chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. I think it's very simplistic to say, but I don't want to offend anyone that might be out there listening. So I want to ask you, Mike Matthews, disappointment, just a freshman. Where would you rank that at this point? And then we're going to get into the discussion of today's tough question, why I think that Tennessee is going to have to eventually beat Georgia at their own game. But first, let me start with Mike Matthews. Please hit the thumbs up button. Back in the day, Caleb, we would say he's a freshman. But nowadays, with 7-on-7 and passing camp, you expect those guys to come in and contribute right away. And it's happened before with Squirrel White a couple of years ago. But it did not happen with Mike Matthews. And now he could be on the way out. But let's not focus on Matthews. Let's focus on the coaching for a second, Caleb. Because Mike Matthews, if you want to compare him to some other guys in the college football playoff, did not have the impact of similar ilk recruits.
No, he did not. And we're talking about, obviously, the receivers that starred for Ohio State and elsewhere, Jeremiah Smith and guys like that. The only difference is I don't think, and we're saying all this, we still don't know if Mike Matthews is going to return, or if he is just bolting because he wasn't happy about touches, or if some NIL money dried up. I don't think the plan was ever for him to be the go-to receiver this year, though. I think the plan was, I think Josh Heupel, with the exception of when he got to Tennessee, has liked to kind of play the seniority game. Now, you may feel a certain type of way about that, Dave, but I know
I totally 110% agree that he plays the seniority game. I think that was most evident with Joe Milton. The question is, does he need to alter that? Because you've got other players that are making plays. I mean, if you want to look to, you can look at Texas. What's the young man's name who had a big game? He suddenly escapes me. And then you had the other young man as well. I mean, you've had receivers making plays. So why is Mike Matthews not one of those guys? And why do receivers seemingly have to wait around to have an impact? That is befuddling to me.
Yeah, no, I don't really think. I think it has just everything to do with Tennessee played seniority, so they went with Brew McCoy because he was the main guy, and Chris Brazel was a higher was an upperclassman. So I think that's all it was this year. I think that's pretty much.
Wait a second, though. Wait, I think you're either giving Matthews or somebody, in my opinion, kind of an easy way out, Caleb. I mean, Mike Matthews couldn't play over Brew McCoy, a receiver that was injured, and Dante Thornton, a receiver that was injured, and Chris Brazel for half the season that had just transferred in as well.
I think that was just hypo playing seniority. They were getting the first team reps, and they were going to. Their plan was to play Matthews next year, and they wanted to force the first teamers and the upperclassmen out this year. I don't really think there was much more to it than that, honestly.
What? Well, I mean, but why was he not ready? Are you telling me if he shows up, and I look at some of the other receivers that are out there, and I look at the guys that are contributing, and Caleb, there's guys that are having an impact that are freshmen, and freshmen aren't like freshmen years ago. So, I mean, is that Matthews' fault? Is that Kelsey Pope's fault? I mean, I have been told that they're taking a long look at Kelsey Pope, and there's an issue there that they're concerned that Mike Matthews wasn't ready, that Tennessee's receivers weren't better. To me, you brought in Landry Jones, you have Joey Halsley, who has very little experience, and you have Kelsey Pope, who did not have a good year. So my question for you is, does this offensive staff, as long as it's under Josh Heupel's guidance, does it need an overhaul?
Yeah. Oh, I would definitely overhaul the offensive staff. I think they need to bring in a new face somewhere on the offensive side. I don't know who or where, but
let me ask you that. Are you talking about an analyst? Are you talking about, because anybody can bring in analysts. They did that with Landry Jones. Are you talking about replacing somebody like a Joey Halsley?
I'm talking about replacing somebody. I think Joey Halsley is too much of a puppet of Josh Heupel and is not an extra voice in the room. And I think that's been a problem.
Well, that's troublesome. And if you're Joey Halsley, are you concerned about the fact that they brought Landry Jones in? Because I would be.
Nah, I think Josh Heupel's still going to stick with Halsley in that regard, because Landry Jones wouldn't bring anything new to the table that Halsley doesn't bring. It's not like he brings a new offensive mind.
I don't know. This feels like, to me, you know what they tell coaches, Caleb, like if they have one last chance, they say you fired this coach or that coach, or you change up your staff. And to me, if they don't do that, then they've got an issue, because I got questions about Kelsey Pope. Hit that subscribe button. If you haven't to this point, go ahead and click that like button as well. Moving on with this. Let's talk about, does Tennessee have to beat Georgia at their own game? We thought beforehand that Tennessee would be able to win with a great offense, a great culture, but when it comes down to it, you win in high school football recruiting. So does Tennessee need to change its approach? Because I look at Tennessee's transfers in the transfer portal, mixed success. When I look at Georgia, I see a team that's built off high school football recruiting. In other words, we all got excited about NIL, but at the end of the day, Caleb, can Tennessee beat Georgia and the elite programs with NIL and transfer portal and C+ high school recruiting?
And for those who don't know, Dave has a column on this right now on Off the Hook that's a really good one that you guys should read. And I know where Dave's going with this, but I'm going to disagree with you, Dave. I don't think they have to beat Georgia at their own game. And I just have yesterday's college football playoff game to prove it. Notre Dame went the transfer route. They went all in on the transfer route, 100%. And what did they do? They beat Georgia. Now, look, I'm going to be the first to tell you guys, I think if Carson Beck is playing that game, Georgia wins.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping for that.
Sorry?
I was hoping for that. I mean, if they have Carson Beck, they win that game.
They do, yes. But at the same time, Notre Dame cashed in on Georgia not being 100%. And this is where I think Tennessee is at. I don't think in the Kirby Smart era, Tennessee will ever, and I mean, I'm sorry, ever be on Georgia's level, pure talent-wise. I don't think it's going to happen. I think what you can do is you can find other ways to get an advantage. What are those ways? You need to find if you're going to be on Georgia's level, if you're not going to be on Georgia's level talent-wise, how do you surpass them? You got to have an advantage at quarterback, because I think, Dave, you would agree one team can be more talented, but the team with the better quarterback can very much neutralize that advantage.
It's the Mike Vick rule. It can change a program.
There you go. Exactly. So there's that. You need a creative offensive scheme that can be a little bit ahead of the curve. And yeah, maybe you need to rely on a little bit of luck every now and then. Something like what happened in this situation where Georgia's starting quarterback was hurt. They were banged up on the offensive line, and it really showed in the playoff game yesterday. In the NIL era, those things are going to happen because, as you know, Dave, one thing that was clear yesterday, Georgia getting hurt on the offensive line, they weren't – if this were 2 years ago, they're still winning that game. But because they were banged up on the offensive line, they couldn't replenish guys up front, and they paid for it. And so I think that's good. That is the focus of Tennessee right now has to be having an advantage at quarterback, but it's also got to be staying ahead of the curve on offense, man. And I think for the past 2 years, they've struggled with that. They've got to figure out how to get back ahead of the curve where teams don't know what they're doing. I would think Josh Heupel's smart enough to go back to the drawing board this all season and add new elements to his game.
Okay, but here's the scary thing. Okay, let's take the wing T, for instance, or let's take the triple option or whatever. It is what it is. So is Josh Heupel's offense. It is what it is. He's tried stuff since 2022 with tunnel screens and doing some different things and Princeton Fant running the ball and all this other things. But ultimately, the offense is what it is. And I think that's what's scary for Tennessee fans is not only Josh Heupel's offense, but it appears as if that offense has been somewhat figured out. You actually referenced this a couple of days ago.
Yeah, no, and I still wonder if it has, but I think I can't as a commentator guess how you couldn't get around it being figured out. That Josh Heupel's paid too much money to not figure out an answer to that. And so I think it's on Josh Heupel. For instance, we brought up Tom Osborne and Tommy in Nebraska for a while. Dave, when Tom Osborne took over at Nebraska, by and large, the triple option had been figured out. There's a reason Tom Osborne went 23 years without winning a national title. What did he do that changed it all? He went for Tommy Frazier. Tom Osborne decided that it was not common practice to have a elite track star, a guy with track speed playing quarterback for you. You kind of almost during the early triple option days, Dave, I'm sure you know this, you kind of had just a fullback with a big arm playing quarterback, right?
Yes.
And Tom Osborne said, let me go for speed more than the fullback power guy. And that changed the entire triple option complexion in the 90s and, really turned Nebraska into a dynasty. And so I think that's got to be the focus of Tennessee is finding a way where they can get a new advantage with this offensive scheme that no one has caught on to yet. Maybe it's more use of the tight ends, honestly. Maybe it's getting a mismatch of tight ends.
I wanted to get to that because there's a problem with that. And I'm going to tell you the problem with using that 12 personnel, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. here's the problem, Caleb. If they decide, hey, we're a 12 personnel team, we're going to run 2 tight ends all the time. You know what that does? That lowers your equity, your fan equity, because it's exciting to see Hendon Hooker throw for 300 million yards. Whereas if you go 12 personnel and you're winning games 23-16, it feels a little bit different. The record might be the same. Tennessee could win 9 games next season, absolutely throwing it all over the park, and people would be like, that was a pretty good year. But if they win with 12 personnel on an average margin of victory by 4.5 points, people would be like, this program's in the toilet.
So
is that not true? I mean, it matters.
Yes, it is semi-true. It doesn't matter if you're winning championships. It's irrelevant if you're actually winning championships. Now, if you're in the 8 to 9 to win range, then yeah, you want to put on a show. But if you're winning titles, I don't think anybody cares how it's done.
Okay, but here, like 12 personnel, winning 9 games or 10 games, and then, or what they did this year, 10 games, and then jumping to that championship level, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. Do you do the 12 personnel if that's what you believe is right so that you can win, or do you have to win to tell your fans the 12 personnel? Because I don't know that they have the talent to just completely change scheme. I think they have to play somewhat to the talent they have, and that's more receivers, that's more inside running. I mean, the direction of this offense is set. So you say change direction a little bit. You say maybe change coaches. I guess I'm a little bit more hesitant than you.
Dave, what I would say is you may have a point if we're talking, what do you do if you're at Maryland, or what do you do if you're even at Florida for that matter? But at Tennessee, if you win, the fans will come. We're talking Tennessee's fan base here. They don't care if they win 3-0. Okay. This is the program built on General Nealon, who notoriously, I don't know if you know the stories of Nealon, Dave, but there were times where when he got in the red zone, if he had a good kicker, he would just go ahead and kick it on first down because he's like, they're not going to score the rest of the game, and I know I'm going to stop them. So he'd kick a field goal on first down and just milk the clock the rest of the game and win 3-0 and call it a day. So, I mean, I just look, that is, I'm sorry. I don't think it's a big deal that I don't think Tennessee, I guess where I'm going with this is if they go 12 personnel, it won't be a big deal. Put it that way. It's not going to be a big deal if they go 12 personnel.
I don't know. I heard a bunch of people griping about it this year, and not this year, but I heard people griping about the tunnel screens in 2023. I don't know. I think people want that 2022 offense back. And I'm just going to tell you, Hendon Hooker was a special deep ball passer. You had an incredible group of receivers that included the Blitnikoff winner. Caleb, Tennessee fans need to deal with the very, very realistic possibility that Tennessee's offense will never be as explosive as it was in 2022.
Yes, they will. But at the same time, now here's the question. In the NIL age, does that hurt? Because I will tell you this. While Tennessee fans may show up for the games, let's be honest, Hendon Hooker to Jalen Hyatt for 3 touchdowns or whatever in a game, that sells tickets. And that also sells endorsements. People want highlights.
That's what I'm telling you. It's the chicken or the egg. So if you don't do that and you're winning by 4 points, do you go to boosters and say, I need you to spend this money on NIL? But we're not as exciting, but we still need you to spend the money. I don't know how that sell goes, Caleb.
No, I don't either. But I you could kind of brand it as, we play tough SEC blue collar football. And you know how like some fans kind of love that. Some fans in the South do love that.
You're talking to one of them. I mean, I would rather that I'd be fine if they said we're going to roll out the triple option next year. I mean, I like that. I like that. You and I have talked about how I like the inside running game.
Well, and I can tell you this, like, I'll just give you a quick example. You guys know I live in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and I live amongst a lot of Ravens fans. And I'll just tell you right now, because of the Ray Lewis era, they take way more pride in winning games 10-7 and 13-10 than they ever do winning like 35-20, something like that. And
now this is a little before your time. Okay. 1998, that entire season, a lot of Tennessee fans, maybe the majority, were like, man, they're just going to screw this one up. The offense isn't good enough. I mean, going into the Arkansas game, I bet if you polled Tennessee fans, 60% said they were going to lose that Arkansas game. It was so odd. It was like you're waiting the whole year for them to stumble. Why?
And that was their first game in 40 years as the number one team in the nation.
I know. Why? Because their defense was great and they were running football team. People don't have faith in that. So my question is, do those NIL people continue to write checks? It's not sexy. It's I'll give you an example. I got a Christmas present. When my mom wrapped it, it was in this beautiful gifts, and it was had a bow and everything. And my dad didn't believe in spending money on wrapping paper, so he wrapped it in the newspaper, which looked more exciting.
I get it, but it's like, I totally understand. It's the same with basketball. With like, okay, in the 90s you had Kevin O'Neal, and in the 2000s you had Bruce Pearl. Now Bruce Pearl won, so it didn't matter. But like, which one? I'll give you an example. Remember how much Tennessee fans did not like Conzo Martin when he was at Tennessee, and I didn't think he was a bad coach, but I think part of it was Conzo was a defensive-oriented, half-court motion offense guy, and you're following Bruce Pearl, who is like nothing but tempo, nonstop all day, the most fun coach to watch.
Okay, but I'm just telling you, Kevin O'Neal is a great example. If he continues to win 50-46, they are not going to be fans of Kevin O'Neal. We've got some breaking news. We want to get to that right now. Do we want to take a quick break before we get to breaking news?
No, let's go ahead and get to the breaking news. Let's go now.
Mike Matthews is back. Tennessee's freshman receiver that was certainly disappointing this year, toyed with possibly entering the transfer portal, did a lot of his paperwork. I believe it was Austin Price who has reported he was back since we got on the air. So how big is this for Tennessee, Caleb?
Oh, this is huge. And also, it is Tennessee fans, everybody take a deep breath. With Mike Matthews back, the transfer portal losses are not a big deal and no more than any other team has suffered this year. Okay, this is what happens in the new era of college football. Mike Matthews shows what I think happened. I think Mike Matthews entered the portal because he was trying to negotiate with Tennessee, which, by the way, that's what you do in this era, right? You negotiate NIL, and that's what you do year to year. I think he went ahead and entered the portal before the window closed, so he would at least have leverage to do it. But I think he always wanted to come back. Does that make sense? And so I think that...
You know what? I don't think it was a money thing from what I've heard. I just think it was a... how do I get along with Kelsey Pope thing? How do I make that relationship work? To me,
that's what it was?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and listen, do not be surprised if they make a change at the receiver position. I've been told that that's not off the table either. Now, did they choose between Mike Matthews or Kelsey Pope? No, you would never choose a player over a coach. But look at all of Tennessee's receivers. I mean, look at what Tennessee's receivers did last year. And I realize there were injuries, but the inconsistency is the most troubling part, Caleb. It seemed like they were dominant one game and then bad for 2 games. Dominant one game, bad for 2 games.
Yeah. And there was more to that. Okay. I showed you guys the scheming yesterday where Ohio State where teams have rolled players over to one side of the field where they knew quarterbacks were looking at it, where they knew Nico was looking, because Josh Heupel only coaches you to look at one side of the field. There were the issues at tackle where Lance Hurd played with a sprained ankle for half the year. So there was a lot going on. Mike Matthews, I think Mike Matthews was limited because I think Josh Heupel and Kelsey Pope committed themselves to the seniority, maybe to their detriment. But Dave, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes it works for team chemistry. I'll say this. You covered Philip Fulmer for a long time. Fulmer got a lot of blame for leaning towards seniority when he could, didn't he?
Yes.
His ties always went to the older guys, right?
Yes. They make less mistakes. He's a conservative coach by nature. So, yes.
Yeah, and maybe that, and to his detriment, because that's why Mark Levine got the start over Jamal Lewis in '97 when Jamal Lewis was so significantly better. But
Didn't matter. They didn't run the ball, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Any what?
They didn't run the ball, so it wouldn't have mattered if Gale Sayers had been in there. But anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, they threw it like 100 times a game the first.
I think they only ran the ball like 12 times. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that look, I think this is a big return for Tennessee. I mean, obviously, I think Mike Matthews is a rare talent. I've stuck with that from the start. And I think he's going to show that this year. One, Mike Matthews has, let's be honest, Dave, let's talk about the wideouts who started this year. Dante Thornton, Chris Brazel, Brew McCoy. Would you not agree Mike Matthews is faster than all of them?
Gosh, I don't feel like Caleb, I think, but I don't feel like I've seen him enough to know. I mean, I feel like
maybe Thornton is faster, but Thornton was banged up this year.
Faster. I would think that. And I don't know about Brazel. I mean, I don't know if you line the two of them up. I haven't seen enough of Matthews to even have a thumbnail sketch of the type of player he is. I don't know if you've seen more of him than I have, but
okay, I'll tell you this. I'm falling asleep.
I have a better feel for Peyton Lewis at running back than I do Mike Matthews at receiver. I might have even had a better feel for Cam Sutton at running back than Mike Matthews at receiver.
I am falling prey to I realize this, and I'll admit this to you guys, and maybe Dave, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. I am falling prey to recruiting highlights because I said Nico was created in a lab for Josh Heupel's offense. That was based on the recruiting highlights of him I saw, and I fell in love with Mike Matthews' speed and athleticism from his recruiting highlights. Am I getting this epiphany, Dave, that highlights are the most overrated way to judge a recruit out of high school?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely could have told you that. Now, I think here is the concern, okay, that Tennessee, had they not got Mike Matthews, and you wonder if they spent too much money on him. But, Tennessee, let's take a look at their potential receiver position. Now, I have been told that Tennessee is in the running for Amari Jefferson. He is at Alabama, and he could enter the transfer portal. So
he's in it. No, he's in it.
I'm sorry, he's entered the transfer. He could end up at Tennessee after he's entered the transfer portal.
And he was committed to Tennessee in the past.
Yes, and clearly we'll get to this more. We're gonna take a look at the transfer portal needs, but just to really quickly throw out what Tennessee has on receiver. Tennessee would only have 2 returning scholarship receivers in Chris Brazel and Braylon Staley.
Well, now they have Mike Matthews back.
Well, Mike Matthews.
Caleb, you're right.
That's a red flag. You're year 4. And you're heading in. I mean, you're year 4 in this program, and you're coming out with 3 receivers, 2 of which are competent. 1, I don't know about Staley. That's not good.
And then Chris Brazel, too. Isn't he a scholarship receiver, or is he?
I mentioned Brazel. So you got Brazel, Staley, and now you've got Brazel, Staley, and you got Matthews. Those are your returning ones. Now, Tennessee will have some receivers coming in.
Well, let's look at who entered the portal real quick.
Okay.
Nate Spillman was a walk-on. Nathan Leacock never got onto the field. Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod were serviceable receivers, but just not great, honestly. You can get better than them. Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton graduated, ran out of eligibility. None of those are red flags whatsoever. Squirrel White was a red flag, but White.
I don't think he's a red flag. Shoulder. I mean, injury's injury.
No. I mean, Squirrel White transferring was a red. Hitting the portal was a red flag.
Okay.
Yeah, Squirrel White hitting the portal was a red
flag this year.
No. Squirrel White hitting the portal was a red flag until you saw Boo Carter's return, because it was very obvious to me, and I keep insisting this. The Boo Carter return was what pushed Squirrel White to the portal, because guys, you're going to see Boo Carter on offense next year.
Well, I'm just telling you, you'd be better off with Boo and Squirrel.
Yes, true. Or just give the ball to Boo every time and have him play 75 snaps a game.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, so Tennessee will also have 3 incoming freshmen at receiver. They're all scheduled to arrive in January. It'll be Travis Smith, Rodarius Jackson, Joakim Dotson. I think we can agree. We're talking about 6 receivers. they need an upgrade in the transfer portal. And we'll talk more about transfer portal needs here momentarily as we're going to address that. Receiver isn't the only position that Tennessee needs some help in. I'll remind you that portions of the program before we get to this day in Tennessee sports history are brought to you by Double D Fire Protection.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, what do you got this day in Tennessee sports history? Caleb Calhoun. This is quickly turning into one of my favorite segments of the show. Before Caleb joined us full time, I hated it with a passion because I could never find good ones in this day in Tennessee sports history. But Caleb, man, he steps up. He's like Nolan Ryan. He throws no hitters every single day.
Like
on the
Nolan Ryan.
Yeah, because you throw heat every day. And if I charge the mound, you might just beat the hell out of me. All right, you've seen that with Robin Ventura, right?
Robin Ventura charged him out on Nolan Ryan. I didn't even.
Yeah, Nolan Ryan took him in a headlock and beat the hell out of him right there on the mound. You haven't seen that's one of the best sports clips ever. All right, this day in Tennessee sports history has nothing to do with Nolan Ryan.
No. First, let me just ask you real quick. So, like, do you think Mike Matthews is locked into a starting job? Because I wanted to ask that before we do this day, or do you think it's up for debate?
I think Josh Heupel is too smart of a coach to promise playing time or a starting position. If he has done that, this is not going to end well.
Really? That's what you
When
think?
you start promising that, you're going down it's the same thing as paying players in high school. Well, when you couldn't play players, they have leverage against you. So if you go to Mike Matthews and say, I just want to tell you, you're going to start every game, and then he dogs it, destroys team chemistry. I think Josh Heupel is way too smart for that. That sounds to me like something Butch Jones would have done. I think I'll tell you, I think Jeremy Pruitt's too smart for that. I think Derek Dooley's too smart for that. I mean, I think you've got to be the dumbest 20% of coach to promise playing time or a starting position. To me, I know coaches, and that's the dumbest thing you can do.
All right. Well, that is intriguing. So my this day is I'm sorry, it's a negative one, but it's a funny one.
Okay.
It's the 15-year anniversary of when the news broke of 4 Tennessee basketball players driving with the gun in their car 2 days after beating Memphis. That resulted in a Tyler Smith dismissal. It was, do you remember this, Dave?
Oh, I remember it because I did a radio show with Mike Griffith, who was of the News Sentinel, and he was covering Tennessee's basketball program at the time, and he told me, nothing to see here, everything's good. The gun wasn't licensed, but no big deal. They need protection because players get attacked. And I thought, Mike is the type of guy that would apologize for somebody he covered if he had like 5 M16s in his trunk.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Tyler Smith, Melvin Goins, Brian Williams, and Cameron Tatum were all arrested during a traffic stop for speeding near Tennessee's campus and charged with gun possession. It was an unregistered weapon. They all got suspended. Tyler Smith got dismissed from the team. It was 3 days after beating Memphis on the road, a big win. And they all get arrested. And the trend on Twitter was very young at the time. And the trend on Twitter was Glocky Top, not Rocky Top, because that was right after that. Remember, that was literally within 2 months of Keith Richardson's robbery that happened.
And the football one kind of overshadowed it a little bit. Like everybody's like, take care of the football players and then do what you got to Tyler Smith. And exactly. So let's face it. Both of those crimes were bad, but you start scratching off the serial number of a gun. That's bad. Like that's mafia.
Is that what Tyler Smith did? Was scratch off the serial number of the gun?
Yes. Yeah, he didn't. Okay, he didn't have a gun legally. I mean, that's a felony.
No, I know he didn't have it legally, but like Keith Richardson.
That means you either buy it from somewhere or you're scratching it off because you're going to sell it to somebody else.
Yeah, but see, like Keith Richardson actually committed a crime with the gun he had, though. He like held up a convenience store.
Ooh, okay. I think it's a little bit worse. I think it's a coin flip to me to going out of your way to finding somebody that fences guns and sells you a gun without a serial number on it.
Are you anti-gun, Dave? Do you not like guns?
No. I'm actually pro arms, but you shouldn't scratch serial numbers off. Can we agree with that?
No, yeah, I totally agree. Well, Rick Barnes has a policy of like players aren't even allowed to have guns on his team, which I'm like, what? Why? If they are legal and registered and law-abiding citizens, why can't they have a gun? They should be allowed to have a gun. Just don't give it to a player.
And you know what happens too? I mean, you tend to go down socioeconomic paths because Josh McNeil, the center, remember when he got busted for having 3 women in his room at the same time? Kudos, Josh. But he had like a bunch of hunting guns. Well, those aren't considered the same thing as like a handgun or a Glock. So there's all kinds. I mean, I know a lot of players that hunt, and they don't broadcast it, but they use guns frequently. But they're not the kind of you would carry into a convenience store like Nukees Richardson. Most surprising thing about Nukees Richardson, that he robbed a convenience store, Caleb, or may I offer this, that he is the only person that I have ever seen that has straddled a punt twice during a game.
Ooh.
Punt coming, and he doesn't know what to do, so he lets it go in between his legs. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. Their selection is unbelievable. Basketball, baseball, more. It is that time of the year. Also want to remind you, National Fitness Center, unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. No long-term contracts. They will take care of you at National Fitness Center. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. And I remind you to stop into Dynasty Pools and Spas, and you can receive a free Off the Hook Sports t-shirt, or you can choose a Celebrate 98 book. Just stop by their Athens exit, Dynasty Pools and Spas.
4 downs, 4 questions, 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Hey, before we get rolling into the Tennessee's needs in the transfer portal, I want to remind you that portions of the program brought to you by Peacock Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to your fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peacock Hydration. Caleb, do you think somebody that's more focused on the transfer portal than high school football recruiting can win a national championship?
You know, I traditionally would say no, but I think if they do it right, I'm now going to say yes. And I think you have to be very smart with it. It's kind of like, okay, let me take it to the NFL for a minute. I used to believe that to be a Super Bowl team, you had to build your team through the draft. I'm sure you believed that too, right? Back in the day?
Yes.
And then what did the Saints do when they won it with Drew Brees? Everybody on that team was kind of like the second best player on a previous team that was kind of off shot. Like Drew Brees was all shot for Phillip Rivers. Jeremy Shockey was all shot. You know, people like a bunch of those guys were all shot, and they signed them all. They went and won a Super Bowl. And then the Seahawks a few years later, what they did that was so genius was they didn't sign anybody the first day of free agency. They waited one day, and then they realized everybody the second day, there'd be a bunch of good players who would be desperate to sign, and they would sign for a little bit less than their value.
May I offer a reason why I disagree with you?
Okay.
Okay. Let's say you're going to get Drew Brees or Geno Smith. Okay. You have plenty of people that you trust to call about those players. How did they handle themselves in meetings? How did they handle themselves off the field? All of that stuff. Well, I know Josh Heupel probably has some great relationships with high school coaches, but the bottom line is you don't have a great relationship with every high school coach of every prospect you recruit. I don't think you can get as much background information, which is why I think the NFL is different from college. I think you could stumble on to a guy that just does not have a great attitude. Because if you get a guy from, let's take Amari Jefferson. Okay, let's pick him out, Alabama. Let's say he has some sort of, I don't know, anger management issue. Do you think Alabama is going to tell Tennessee that?
No, they're not. But there's another layer to that, Dave, though. And maybe this fuels your point, but maybe it actually could work in reverse if some of this is luck. College kids, it's much harder to predict their behavior because your psychology changes so much between 19 and 20. You know what I mean? So like,
Lord, yes.
Yeah. So like a kid could be a very good kid as a freshman and then a totally wayward kid at 21, or you could have an Alvin Kamara situation. Well, Alvin Kamara, bad example, given what he's done in the pros. Okay. Anyways, there were other kids how many kids did you cover that they arrived on campus and they were problem kids? But by the time they were seniors, they were as mature as you could possibly be. And you just saw them be great leaders.
I probably said 50-50. I mean,
but that happens.
Yeah. And a lot of the guys I knew that they were having issues, but I mean, I've seen a lot of them. Ontario Smith. Is it Ontario Smith? Smith? Is that his last name?
Transferred out to Oregon?
Yeah. And I've seen Lee Smith, no relation. I mean, I've seen 50-50 may be generous as far as the guys that turn it around. If you show up on campus and you're trouble from the get, I don't think that changes. All right, the poll question that is up now, does Tennessee's offense need an overhaul? It's on our YouTube page. Please put that up there. Yes, there are problems, 50%. No, just small changes, 39%. And then all is good, 11%. Does it surprise you that 50% of our fans say that there are problems, like it needs an overhaul? Does that surprise you?
Yeah, I do. And I'm glad our fans are smart because I know some Tennessee fans are not Tennessee fans. Some national media have been, and I hate when they do this now in college football. When they pull up the stats, they're like, Tennessee averages this many points a game, and they average this many yards. And it's like, yeah, but they pad those points in yards against Kent State and Chattanooga. And they never show what they're doing against, like, don't you think we should separate stats nowadays, Dave? Like your yards per game against SEC competition versus against your Power 5 competition versus your yards per game against Kent State and things like that.
I've thought that for roughly 15 years. So there you go. I mean, there are times I write that Tennessee after September has the second best offense in the SEC. And I'm like, am I lying to my readers?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel dirty.
Because you're right. Because back in the day, they would always play like the easiest road in September. It's so funny. Or like back in the day, my favorite was when Johnny Majors were like, we have the best record in November of any SEC team. Well, yeah, who are you playing in November? But
well, no, I'm back in the day. 2024 last year, I felt like after September when I was talking about Tennessee had a good offense that they really didn't. By the way, on our message board, there should be a Carfax for transfer players. Some of them have serial numbers scratched off too.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Do it.
Coop here. First down.
All right, first down, Caleb, as we will ask this question, our poll question, but let's talk about some transfer portal needs. First of all, give me the 4 positions that you think Tennessee has the biggest concern with the transfer portal, and then we'll break them each down.
I'm going linebacker, defensive tackle, offensive line, and wide receiver.
Okay, let's start with a linebacker.
Okay, that's the 4th biggest need.
Okay.
So linebacker, I think they have their starters for next year. Arian Carter is a future superstar. I think Jeremiah Thielander will develop in the offseason. Who do they have after that?
Yeah, you're thin. I mean, you're very, very thin. The problem is you have 2 starters. So my question is, can you go to a guy who is at another school and just get him with NIL cash? Or what do you get him with? Because playing time's not going to be one of them.
Yeah, you try to get him with NIL cash and maybe promise him that he'll be in the rotation, and maybe he's just a freshman. Maybe he's just played 1 year, something like that. But I think that's your best bet. But yeah, you've got to do something, because I do think that, like, look, linebacker is, I don't think there's one. We're not so sure. One, I think just for the sole purpose, maybe promise some competition. Jeremiah Thielander needs some competition at middle linebacker this year. He shouldn't be given that starting role.
Yeah, but I do think he's going to be really good, even though I was down on him and he made some mistakes when he was forced in there with Keenan Pili. I do think he's going to be really good. So that is linebacker. What were the other 3 positions, sir?
All right, so let's hit second down, and then I can give you the 3.
I will. Give me the other 2 because I need the other ones.
All right, defensive tackle, offensive line, and wide receiver.
Okay, all right.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, defensive tackle.
I'm switching. I'm moving wide receiver down. Let's do wide receiver here.
Okay,
they're the 3rd
most wide receiver here.
Yeah, I had wide receiver number 1, but with Mike Matthews back, they're down to number 3.
Okay. Wide receiver, they still don't have a lot of returning depth. They got Brazel, Staley, Matthews.
And Staley barely played, and Matthews barely
you lose
played.
Squirrel White. To me, that's the number 1 concern, given how this offense operates. But
but I
agree to disagree.
I think that, and this is where you and I break. I actually think that you can in this system. I still think you can plug guys in at wide receiver. I don't think route running or hands is that important at wide receiver in this system. I just think speed is, honestly.
Okay. Kyle said we don't need linebacker help. Well, you're both right. If Tennessee, Jeremiah Thielander and Arian Carter are 100%, it's a team strength. If one of them gets hurt, you got a problem.
Got a big problem. Huge problem.
Right. Ready for third down?
So yeah, let's go to third down.
Boom goes the dynamite.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, third down.
Defensive tackle. I mean, let's just talk about who's being lost this year. I mean, Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, Elijah Simmons. I believe Jackson Boyd does return. Excuse me. But Omar Norman Lott. You just lose a ton of guys at defensive tackle, and that was such a strength being able to rotate so many guys this year. They gotta open up the NIL checkbook for some defensive tackles. Honestly, I think they should spend as much on that as offensive line this offseason.
Somebody mentioned Spillman. Did we leave him out there? Did you mention Spillman?
Edwin Spillman
Yes.
at linebacker?
Yes.
I mean,
I've actually heard good stuff about him. I will tell you that I think he's going to be a good player. I think what's weird for me is with the way Tennessee runs that pseudo nickel position linebacker. I don't know where exactly Spillman fits in because he feels like a weak side linebacker to me, but the weak side linebacker is now taken up by a lighter nickelback. So I don't know where he ends up, but I do think
Such a great band. I love Nickelback so much.
It's terrible. All right, what down are we
By
on?
the way, you know how I feel about those Lipscomb kids. That's why I'm backing off of Spillman right now.
What down are we on? Are we on defensive tackles?
We were talking defensive tackles on third down, but I was saying, they got, Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, Bryson Easton, Elijah Simmons are all gone. They gotta get more help at defensive tackle this year.
Yep, I agree with that. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right, fourth down, the position that is most important for the Vols to address. And 4 downs brought to you in part by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. I'm going to go out on a limb. Edwin Spillman will be an all-SEC player.
That's hot.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Next position that Tennessee needs to address in the transfer portal is?
This one is so obvious, but it's offensive line. Now, they did add Wendell Moe Jr., the Arizona transfer. So I think they have the replacement for Javonte Spraggins. Andre Carrick is trying to get another year of eligibility. But center is an issue, right tackle is an issue, depth is an issue on the offensive line right now. And they still have yet to start a player out that Josh Heupel signed out of high school on this offensive line going into year 5.
Satterwhite will be the guy. Larry Johnson will be a guy.
Is he a guy or is he like? I think there's a difference between a guy and like a player.
I feel like between Spillman, Johnson, and Satterwhite, that I'm just telling you that everybody's going to be great. But I've heard great things about those 3 guys. I think Larry Johnson, when he adds some more strength, he gets his mitts on you. He has a long reach, and I think he'll be a very good tackle. I think Satterwhite I like a lot. I've talked to Coop about him. Coop's very high on him, and Coop's never misled me. And then I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Am I forgetting somebody?
Satterwhite, Larry Johnson. If we're talking specifically on the offensive line, there's because Jackson Lampley's gone. There's Brian Grant, Max Anderson, Bennett Warren. A bunch of guys that Shamrod Umarov, Gage Ginther.
I think Sham is going to have an impact too.
Okay, well, this is the year that we find out if Josh Heupel actually ever bothered to develop and recruit high school offensive linemen. So, it's because it doesn't seem like he's had any interest in that so far. It seems like up until this point, he's recruited offensive linemen just to fill roster spots.
Well, but some of that was necessary in the first couple of years when you're trying to rebuild a program. You're not going to get the pick of the litter every time.
You're not, and I guess you don't want to do what Derek Dooley did, which is like, I want to do the pick of the litter, so I'm not going to sign an offensive lineman if it's not a guy I don't want in the whole class.
I mean, you'd rather sign. Okay, if Umarov, Johnson, Satterwhite, if 2 of those pan out, how much does it change your perception on Josh Heupel and his offensive line recruiting prowess or lack thereof?
It, I think, alleviates. I mean, it assuages it. Put it that way.
Assuage.
Yes.
Good word. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So looking back at the transfer portal needs, I would think we would feel most confident about receiver, right? Because 2 years ago, we were saying every receiver wants to play for this offense. Now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that Rodney Garner and what he did last year doesn't make it easier to recruit defensive tackles. I'm not so sure that linebacker may be easier to recruit to.
I don't know. I thought what Rodney Garner did last year may make it easier, but I thought the way Tennessee's defensive line looked against elite competition draws that into question. Ohio State and Georgia, they didn't show up in those two games the way they should have. The defensive line didn't.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Ollie Lane will join us next, the former Vol. We always look forward to that. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, again, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. At 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Ask you, Caleb. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Are you pleased with the college football playoff in year one? Has it lived up to the billing?
No.
Did it change anything?
No. It never should have happened. The expanded playoff never should have happened. Go back to the old bowls. That's what I want. I never wanted a 14 playoff. I wanted the bowl games. And I liked the bowl games. I didn't even like the BCS, Dave. I want to just do all the old school bowl tie-ins, and all they had to do was a +1 where just rank the teams after the bowl games and take those top 2 teams and they play for a national title. That's all I ever wanted.
I have to admit I like it. I have to admit I like it a lot. There are things I would change, such as the bye. That didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. I still don't completely understand that. I did like the home field that individual teams had. I thought that made the product better. So I don't know. I've been very pleased. If I had to give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, I would definitely give it a thumbs up. I wouldn't give it a resounding thumbs up. How about that?
All right, that makes sense. That's fair.
Quality Tire Pros. Yes.
I will just say, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the format was an abject failure. Even if you think the expanded playoff was a good idea, the format that they set up was an abject failure.
Here's what I was told, and I haven't been able to confirm this, that those that put together, we don't even know who it is. Is it the NCAA, the SEC, the Big Ten? We have no idea. But I was told this, that they actually, those that put together the college football playoff format, in order to come up with that idea, they actually went in a time machine and went to a heroin den in the old West, the Wild West, and that's where they came up with it.
Love it.
I haven't been able to confirm that, Caleb, but do you doubt it?
No. I don't doubt it at all.
That format's pure heroin. I've never done heroin, but I would imagine that heroin comes up with some sort of playoff bracket like that. Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Caleb Calhoun and Off the Hook Sports said hello, and they will certainly take care of you. Also, you want to remind you about our friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Just go to Facebook, follow on Sports Treasures, TN.com. So, Caleb, let me ask you, while we line up Ollie Lane here, did you
he's on.
Oh, do we have Ollie? I'm sorry. Okay. Ollie, it's been a long vacation. I'm struggling. I'll update you. It's been a crazy 6 weeks. All right. So Ollie, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good. What do you think of the college? Former ball Ollie Lane joining us now. What do you think of the college football playoff year one?
I don't know. I'm kind of middle thumb. I mean, it's been fun to watch, but at the same time,
Hey, Ollie. That's better than middle finger.
Yeah. But it's been fun to watch. Obviously, the matchups have been somewhat decent, I guess. And I mean, being able to see more football later in the year is nice. But I think the way they've got it set up now, I don't think it's sustainable. I don't know if it'll work out in the future. I mean, especially with the conference championship games. I mean, when you look, every single conference championship one lost their playoff game. Then all 4 teams that had the bye lost. So the bye had no advantage whatsoever. And I mean, if you think about it more in a playoff setting, I feel like, the home field advantage in the first round was cool for this year. But I mean, if you want a true playoff, like this team versus this team, I feel like you got to play on neutral sites, because I mean, that's just where you get the most. You strip away as much of the outside stuff as you can and say, all right, it's this team's talent versus this team's talent at a neutral site. Now, granted, I'd probably be saying something different if the neutral or we were at home for our playoff game, because it adds a little bit different feel to it for your own team. But I mean, just looking at it, like for Oregon, it sucks for Oregon to go undefeated, number 1 all year, and then you got to run into Ohio State again, who you barely beat, which was a huge game for you early in the regular season. Now you got to play them again, and they're on a heated trail and just tore through them like it was nothing. I mean, that shouldn't be happening in the playoffs. I mean, the most interesting game, I feel like, from this last week was the Texas-Arizona State game, and that was more, I feel like, Texas just kind of letting them come back into that game and compete with them. Now, I think Arizona State played really well, but I mean, that was the only one that really kind of like stood out at me. That was a good matchup, I guess, per se. But I mean, I think you've got to relook at how they're seeding the teams. I mean, I saw before the playoff started someone taking, all right, you've got your 12 teams, now seed them realistically into what they should be. No bye for conference championship, because I mean, at the end of the day, the conferences are not equal. And I mean, I think if you're going to continue to have this 12-team playoff look, you probably should just get rid of the conference championship game entirely and just crown whoever has the best record at the end of the year. Hey, you won the conference this year. Congratulations. But there's no reason to waste that game when in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't even really matter that much. I mean, you got a bye, but every team that got the bye that won their conference championship lost. So, I mean, it didn't seem to prove anything as an advantage-wise to those teams.
Well, the problem is that the SEC championship game makes millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how they get rid of that, but you're right. Caleb said that it would be de-emphasized early. I thought it might take a couple of years, but it felt like it was de-emphasized in year one.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the fact is that game at the end of the day didn't matter that much because Texas is still in the Final Four. Georgia got the bye because they won, but ended up losing. So, I mean, it didn't really matter that they won that game to get the bye. And then, I mean, you look at like Clemson should have never been in the playoffs, shouldn't have been a consideration for the playoffs. Well, they win the conference championship. Let's give them the 12th spot and let them play Texas in the first round. I mean, you could have put so many better opponents into the playoffs than them. And I just saying, Arizona State played really well against Texas, but I mean, did they really deserve a spot? And then, I mean, you look at Boise State. Just Boise State, did they deserve the bye in the first round? I don't know, just because it's hard to compare those teams against the other Power Four conferences because it's completely different. You saw what happened when they went out there against Penn State. What everyone I think probably realized is that when Genty and them go against a normal defense, a good defense, he's just going to look like another normal running back. And he had some good plays in that game, but it wasn't like the great Bo Jackson reincarnated running back that everybody been talking about all season.
Yes, I totally agree.
Caleb, I want you to jump in there. Ollie brought to you in part by our friends at the UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link right down below. UPS store, Hardin Valley, proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols.
So, Ollie, I totally agree with you, and I wanted to talk to you even further about this because, like, let's just take the SEC championship for a minute. Let's take Georgia, and then let's take Notre Dame. Notre Dame, everybody said they were stupid for not joining a conference, and they willingly relinquished the chance at a first-round bye. And their whole point was, they said it at the time. They're like, yeah, we're not going to get a first-round bye in the college football playoff, but we never had to play a conference championship game. And so what happened? Notre Dame gets a home playoff game, whereas Georgia has to play the SEC title game. You could say Georgia got a bye, but I would say that playing the SEC title game took a hell of a lot more out of Georgia than that first round college football playoff game against Indiana took her out of Notre Dame, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I'd 100% agree with that. And that makes perfect sense for Notre Dame not to go and join the conference that they need to, because they don't have to. I mean, they can continue to play whatever games they want to, and if they win enough of them, which they're going to schedule themselves up in a situation to win enough of them, they'll get in the playoffs. And honestly, I think it's better to not take – I mean, Georgia had a break from the SEC championship game all the way until yesterday to play, whereas Notre Dame had a game in between that, and they weren't ever really had downtime to get themselves, I guess, out of it, out of the feeling of playing and stuff like that. I think when you give these buys to some of these teams, like you stretch it out over a while, they're going to get cold. You got to get reused to playing football again. It's almost like a mini off season in between. There's a lot of pressure that builds up as those games continue to be further and further out. But I mean, I think you hit it right on the spot. I mean, Notre Dame almost seems to have the head IQ in this is like, oh, we're not going to play in a conference championship. There's no reason to have them anymore. We're just going to skip that. I'll take the home playoff game, and that'll be my route to the championship, which seems to be working out fairly easier than every other team that won their conference championship and got the bye.
Ollie, we discussed on a couple of different occasions. There were some really timely bye weeks for Tennessee that allowed them to get fresh. And I understand that you're going to be more fatigued at the end of the year playing 15 football games instead of 10. However, you kind of hinted at something that I was curious about. There is something to be said for staying in rhythm. As long as you don't suffer injuries, isn't there something to that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the longer that you take off of playing, like, I mean, for instance, is a little exaggerated, but I mean, that off season from whenever you're done with the season until spring ball, when you get back up, that first week of spring ball is hard to get back into the flow of things and know what you're doing. And I mean, when you get 2 to 3 weeks off, you're looking at, all right, I mean, chill. You got for them, they had Christmas. They all got to go home, I'm sure, for Christmas and enjoy that. So you take not only you're taking time away from just playing football, but you're also during those holidays, you take time away from the game in general, entirely from the program, and you're on your own. And then you got to come back, and now it's all right. It's go time. Let's get ready for the game. It's coming up. All this stuff. So I mean, it's a lot of moving parts. And I mean, like I said, the further you get out from that game time, the more, you can recreate collisions and stuff like that in practice. But I mean, you're not going to know until you go up against somebody. And the more consistently you're going against talent, you're going to get used to what you need to do and more in the feel of your mannerisms, your steps and all that stuff. But I mean, the further you take out of it, because I mean, you can't 100% replicate a game rep in practice. You want to try to give your 100% effort in practice, but nothing's ever going to play out like a game until you get in the game. So, I mean, the more space you have between that, I think the more you you rust up a little bit and you lose some of that stuff that you hammered in for 12 games, kind of nailed down and everything. You forget about that for a little bit till it hits about halftime, second quarter of the game. You're like, I got to pick it up. I'm not where I was when we played our last game.
So let's talk a little bit about a few ways maybe to fix this. What about, so rather than a bye, what if they went to like, say 16 teams and just the conference champions got guaranteed home games? Because it seems like the home games are much more valuable than a bye, right?
Yeah, no, I think that would honestly pay off a little bit better. And then, I mean, you're including a couple more teams, getting more of a strategic look at it. I think realistically, if they really want to nail this down to a 100% perfect resume, I guess, for a playoff, I think you got to restructure what your conferences are and somehow play those conference championships in a playoff setting, similar to many other professional leagues where the playoffs are set up feed into a conference championship that then feed into the big game. And I think that's probably what they need to try to move themselves to in the future. It's obviously a lot harder because college football contains way too many teams. So I think at some point you gotta have to say, all right, these are my group of teams that are in college football are competing. Maybe even like a reclassify of what Division I and Division II is, set apart some of those teams so you can truly, because I mean, you're never going to get a true actual playoff picture like you would really intend to have with just how diverse and spread out college football is. I mean, it's not just you got 32 teams and you're going to split them in half and this half's in this conference, this half's in the other. There's a lot of moving parts that I think you could potentially just go like north, south, east, west, have it broken up that way or something like that. But I mean, while you still got Power 4, Group of 5, Pac-12 somewhere around in there, I mean, you've got too many outside parts that mess up what the playoff picture should look like.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think too, if you want to keep it how it is, you just got to re-look at using I think, like you said, getting rid of the bye and just figuring out a smarter way to seed these teams. It shouldn't be just based off of – it should be based off of, yes, record and what they've done over the year, but also just overall talent composition of the team. Create good matchups in the playoff. You don't want to continue to give some of these teams just cupcake walks into the championship game.
Now, I will say this. One of the things I was pleasantly surprised by with the college football playoff, the Tennessee-Ohio State game was standing, is that it seemed like I thought 5 years ago that this would be an abject failure because either Alabama or Georgia would dominate. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like some of the gap has been closed. Obviously, Notre Dame beat Georgia. I guess that's transfer portal, NIL, but it does seem like there are 8 to 12 teams that could win a championship. And I wouldn't have thought that was the case 5 years ago. I would have thought Alabama's just going to roll through it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the talent level all across college football has gotten better. And I mean, I think this playoff, if anything, has highlighted that the SEC's maybe fallen off just a touch. I mean, I can't remember the last time Notre Dame's been able to have a program building win over an SEC powerhouse like they did.
I think it was 1990, and I was there. That was in Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, see, like I'm used to the Notre Dames that they don't play anybody, they get to the championship and just get absolutely wrecked by an Alabama team. That's the Notre Dame that I'm used to. So still, I mean, it's just
Ollie's still the best line. When Brian Kelly was asked, "What do you guys need to do in the second half to come back?" Alabama not show up. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was one of the most stunning halftime interviews I've ever seen.
But no, I mean, I think it has shown that the SEC is not the big powerhouse that they are. And I don't know. I mean, I think you can look back at the season and a lot of people justify it like, oh, they were beating up on each other. More SEC teams should have been in the playoffs. I mean, if that's the case, that's the case. But it shows that the Big Ten and teams like Notre Dame are right there with us now. Now, I think the ACC's got a couple teams that could compete with us but aren't fully there yet. But, I mean, you're seeing more parity within the college football, and you've seen it all over the place this year. And I think a lot of it's got to be credited to the transfer portal. I mean, I think it's so big what the transfer portal can do now. I mean, it's created a free agency with no contract ties in college football. I was when someone was talking about it when Belichick got hired, they were like, you can't treat them like NFL players because, I mean, he'll run them off and they don't have any contract ties to the program. They can leave whenever. And I think that's played a huge part in it. Guy goes somewhere, doesn't like it. Well, I can just leave and I'll be immediately eligible the next season. And then I think, too, a part of that is just the disbursement of money going around. Every program's got the ability to pull in big players now with the large amounts of money for the most part, especially in your Power 4 conferences. So I think that's helped even the playing field out because not everybody's just as a recruit's coming out and saying, all right, I want to go to Alabama because Alabama wins championships. There's more of, well, I want to go here because they're going to pay me this. I'm going to get to do this. I'm going to get this, and this endorsement. And they promised me this playing time and all this stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot more factors that go into their recruitment process that helps, I guess, disperse the talent a little bit, but also just kind of tears away at what I always believed in was the whole purpose and point of college football. It's program tradition, program pride. You build in, you buy into a program at a college, and you give that your best to that community that thrives on those programs.
All these appearances brought to you in part by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler on Kingston Pike. Affordable game day jewelry like those fire opals, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. And they take what you want, what you're looking for, and they make it. That's a jewelry designer. They are fantastic. Ollie, you're a smart guy. Would you support a union?
No.
Okay. Why?
No. I just, everything I've heard about them, it's not, I understand the points of them, but there's a lot of weird things that go on with the union that I don't understand, I guess, 100%.
Yeah,
but like
neither did Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
Okay. No union. I was just curious because I'm on the same page.
But you can't have a salary cap without a union, guys. That's the thing. If you want a salary cap and revenue sharing, that's not going to that's an antitrust violation if you don't allow. The only way you can have a salary cap is if the players can unionize.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a free for all.
No, I think there should be like a college football players association. We had talked about trying to do that during the COVID season. Nothing ever really materialized from it. But I think there should be something out there that's players looking out for players. There's SAC, but they don't have as much power as you'd want them to. Now, granted, I don't know
what is SAG?
Student athlete. I don't know. It was a part of it. Now I can't remember what it stands for. Student athlete something. But it was pretty much just to help like student athletes give like information and stuff about what's going on and how they can improve the college athletics and stuff like that as a whole. But I mean, I think like with the NFL and their players association, they do a lot in making things better for those players. And now it's obviously different college football because they're not professionals, but they're pretty much getting paid close to professional wages, if not more for some people. So I think having something out there that's just guys fighting for their own guys helps, especially dealing with the NCAA is not always nice. And so I think having some a powerful voice to help with that would. But granted, I'm not a union guy. I don't know if the union idea would work a ton.
So, well, a players association would be a union effectively. So, but I guess what about this? Here's beyond players associations and all of that, I'm sorry. I don't know what you think. I think they should just take the SEC, Big Ten combined, and then take a few other elite teams and just abolish the conferences. I know the SEC.
No, I said that 6 months ago, Caleb.
No, because you wanted the SEC and the Big Ten to be like AL, NL. I'm like, no SEC, no Big Ten. Just take the top 50 teams. And also, what about this? Then do your playoff, a relegation model. So in a Premier League soccer, the 4 bottom teams at the end of the year have to play it out to avoid being demoted to
the bottom league.
To the bottom league, and the top 4 get promoted up. How about
actually, Peyton Manning called in and give his thoughts on that.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
It's the worst idea, Caleb. You can't relegate teams.
Yes, you can. I love this. Have 2 tiers of Division I, like Group of 5, Power 5, and there are no conferences. They're just all in one or the other. And the bottom tier teams get relegated and the top tiers get promoted. And call it a day. I think you should do it.
I've been talking about it for a couple of years. I think at some point they just need to separate college football from the NCAA as a whole, and just like the XFL, like the UFLs try to be that minor league system for the NFL. All you got to do is just create it, and then you take that football program tie away from the university, and you just say, all right, I want to bring this kid in. I'm either going to pay you a salary or I'm going to give you a scholarship to go to school. You decide if you want to go to school, or if you think you're talented enough to get to the league, I'm just going to pay you a salary. You focus on playing football and we'll get you to the league. I think that's probably the smart, because there's guys that go to college, especially for basketball. They're not going for a degree. They're going to play 1 year and be done. Or for football, they're going to play, make some big noise, play for 2 or 3 years, then get out and go to the league. That's some of the mindsets for some people. They don't care about the school. So, take that away, separate it from the NCAA, make it its own thing. Now you got a true minor league system for the NFL, which hasn't been ever really around. Obviously, college football has been the stepping stone for players. But now you just create a whole new league. You probably generate some more revenue. You have less regulations and rules from the NCAA. And like you said, it's a league of their own.
Ollie Lane raises the average IQ of the show every Friday. We appreciate him being on. Have a fantastic weekend. Let's grab lunch sometime, buddy.
Sounds good. I appreciate you guys.
Ollie Lane's the best. Happy New Year. But blessings to you, sir. We appreciate you.
Happy New Year to you guys as well.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Ollie just went in and he said, I've got to have 100 million or I'm not playing center for you. No, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. But I do wonder what Mike Matthews did. Ollie's still there. Ollie, how does that, let me bring you back real quick. Ollie, how does that work when you're negotiating something as a player? Because I don't know how much you negotiated, but guys are asking for either more money or can you negotiate for playing time? How does that work?
I don't know. I never was much of a negotiator. I just kind of took what I got and was happy with it. But, I think when it goes down to it, I think it's just one, as some of these kids are negotiating for more playing time or more money, I think a lot of them have to get hit with the realistic stick and understand what's realistic for what they're worth, especially where they're at. Especially it makes me so frustrated with these younger guys. When I was a freshman, I wanted to play. I wanted to be on the field every single snap, but it wasn't going to happen. There was a lot of seniors ahead of me that had put in their time with the program and got to play. And so, it's like you're not even giving it an opportunity to grow. Now, obviously, there might be other outside factors that cause that freshman not to enjoy where they were at. But at the same time, it's like you got to give a program a chance. A year, some of these 6 months, that's not long enough to know if this is the place you want to stay at or not. But as far as negotiating stuff, I think it's harder for coaches because they have the more information to know what's realistic for them and what's not. Whereas the players probably have a lot of outside noise saying they're worth this, they're worth that. I think like On3's got that NIL evaluation of what they think you should make. I think my On3 NIL evaluation was like $130,000. I didn't make a single dime. So I never brought that to anybody. I was like, oh, this is what this says I should be making. So put it on my table. I was like, yeah, I just played football. And I think that's there's too much outside stuff that affects people into having that. All right, realistically, this is where I'm at. I've got to earn this potential. Yeah, you did a lot in high school, but what people are forgetting is that there's a big step from high school to college football. That you might be the top dog in high school, but you're really not playing that much of a higher talent. And then when you get to college and you're surrounded by all that higher talent, your talent just doesn't look as good as it did. Well, now we already spent so much money on you you're only really worth what we're paying everybody else. So I think there's a point in that where you've got to be realistic about what you're really asking for, and then at the end of the day, you don't want to burn bridges. That's the biggest thing I always tell people is don't burn a bridge before you got it. And I think a lot of these negotiations end up doing that because players get frustrated and then the coaches get frustrated and nothing ever works out. And then it just ends up ruining a relationship that could have been something really good for both sides.
That's well put. Ollie, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Happy New Year. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up on the program, we'll have stat of the day. Is John Calipari the most hated basketball coach by Tennessee fans in basketball history? And also, Lady Vols win in their opener. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. 24 Ford Transit 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929. Local you trust, power you can afford.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Here's a what the H question that Caleb's been trying to get me to believe for weeks, and I fought him on it. I said, no, you're off base. There's money to be had, and that television contract isn't it. But Caleb, I think with the SEC struggles in the college football playoff, I'm going to fall in line behind you. I think you're talking about there are players at Texas, there are players at other schools that, in particular, Tennessee was recruiting, that are making plays. And to me, that's as simple as bidding for the elite players, because we can talk about a 3-star Caleb goes because he's close to home, he's a legacy player, blah, blah, blah. But if you're one of the elite guys like Mike Matthews, or who are the others, Ryan Gibson that we talked about earlier in the program. I'm sorry?
Ryan Williams and Amari Jefferson. You're talking about portal guys?
Well, no. I was talking about guys that have had good playoff runs recently.
Oh, Jeremiah Smith. Most notably.
Jeremiah Smith would be one, and then Ryan Gibson was the other one that's been done pretty well, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I think you're seeing that the other schools were able to spend more. And that to me is troubling. And I know Texas has one of those players, Gibson, that we talked about. But here's the bottom line with him is that I don't know that Texas is a comparable SEC program right now because their athletic budget is far beyond. And I have real concern for the first time, especially with this TV contract that's coming up, that's not going to pay SEC teams nearly as well. I have serious questions about the SEC being the preeminent conference in the nation 2, 3, 4 years from now. What the H? I'll say it. The SEC is about to get surpassed if they don't do something pretty quickly.
Yes. And here's what I think is really scary that has happened. Now, I'm not so sure that the Big Ten was actually better than the SEC this year. The SEC was overrated. I think the seeding with the college football playoff format was so screwy that and then Georgia's quarterback got hurt. I mean, just a bunch of different things happened. And Indiana really didn't belong in the playoff to begin with.
I think the Big Ten was better, but not decidedly better as it looked in the playoffs.
I thought I still think going all the way 1 to 16 or 1 to 18, when you get to the 6 to 11, the SEC is way better at 6 to 11 than the Big Ten is at 6 to 11. Even though and people are going to bring up the bowl games, but guys, these bowl games don't actually mean anything anymore, so you can't judge that. My point is this, and you're seeing this with the transfer portal, guys. It's not about the money the Big Ten has right now, or the Big Ten schools, excuse me. Because, this was the first year of the contracts for both leagues, and the Big Ten teams got paid out way more. What it's about is the money, and this is the underrated part about NIL. It's the money you can promise kids on the back end. Okay, so you can go to a kid.
Clarify me. I didn't follow you. Clarify that for me.
You tell a kid, and you can even get it in writing, too, on paper. I can pay you this year, but I can pay you this in 2 years, and I can pay you this in 3 years.
Well, I would hope everybody's doing an escalating contract.
Yes, but the Big Ten has that's where the Big Ten has leverage over, the Big Ten schools have leverage over the SEC. They're about to get, every single Big Ten school is about to walk home with roughly $10 to $15 million in revenue per year because of TV deals. I haven't even done the math in my head, but let's just do it real quick, guys. Per year, the Big Ten is going to bring home $700 million than the SEC. Now just divide that by 18. And that's how much more money the Big Ten schools are bringing home than the SEC schools. If you just divide 700 million by 18, it's roughly, I undershot it. The Big Ten is bringing home, I'm not even kidding you guys, 35 to 40 million per school more than the SEC schools.
That's roughly what I was told schools were spending on NIL. So
an entire NIL budget.
Yeah, you're essentially saying you have another NIL budget.
Think of that for a minute. Think of that. Every Big Ten school now has a separate NIL budget on top of the SEC's already NIL budget.
Well,
now,
yeah, and we kind of got into a little bit of a gray area, but there has to be some sort of salary cap, which leads to some sort of union, some sort of something, right?
I don't think the Big Ten's going to agree to it. This is the Big Ten sees blood. This is their chance to wreck the SEC and be the premier conference over the next 7 to 10 years. And this college football playoff may put it on steroids because, look, like I said, I still think the SEC was a tougher conference, but let's just ask this question. The allure of recruiting, of half of the lure of recruiting was the name brand of the SEC. You're going to play in the SEC, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially for Southern kids.
Yes, exactly. You don't think with the narrative that's out there right now with what just happened in this playoff, that allure died just a little bit?
Yes.
For the Big Ten?
Now, the question is, did it hit a bump in the road like when Nebraska beat Tennessee or when, Florida State won a championship or Miami?
Or the first year of the bump in the road, the first year of the 14 playoff. That seemed like a bump. That seemed like, I don't know if you remember that, but in the first year of the playoff, remember Ohio State won it. Alabama got knocked out early. This was 10 years ago, and everybody thought the Big Ten was about to overtake them because the Big Ten had Jim Harbaugh coming to the SEC. James Franklin, Urban Meyer was still there, and so everybody thought the Big Ten was about to take another leap. Michigan State was still rolling. So it could just be a bump in the road, but like the difference between that and this is we were just analyzing coaches, and I'm analyzing money. Guys, I'm sorry. Money outweighs everything when it comes to success.
So you're saying these are at least a couple of bumps in the road and maybe a washed out highway. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. If you like, how are the SEC teams supposed to compete? I mean, you just talk, Dave has a great column up now, guys. We talked about it earlier. And Dave, I just want to go ahead and ask you, do you think that Tennessee, because Dave thinks, guys, Tennessee's 10-2 record doesn't look as good anymore because of how down the SEC looked this year?
No, I think it's very average. I mean, you've got your two biggest wins are Alabama and Florida, and traditionally that's great, but those are two teams that make the college football playoff. I'm not even sure that Alabama was close in the committee's mind. So, yeah, I mean, those are your two wins. I mean, those are your two big wins.
And Tennessee got and part of it was, it wasn't playing in the SEC. It was they got an easy SEC draw, not like Indiana.
They got an easy SEC draw, and with their buys were well placed.
Yes. So I think that there was a really big concern for Tennessee and the SEC going forward with this, even this year notwithstanding. But the SEC flames out in these bowl games and in the college football playoff. The transfer portal is running wild. And the Big Ten is sitting here saying every single one of our schools has another NIL budget. And here's the crazy part. Meanwhile, SEC basketball is loaded. The SEC is a better basketball conference than a football conference right now, guys, if you look at it.
The SEC will be the dominant program 3 to 5 years. I'm sorry. The SEC will be the dominant conference in college football 3 to 5 years from it. Will you bank on it or not? Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
I'm going to say bank on it. I'm going to side with the SEC that the SEC will still be the preeminent conference 3 to 5 years from now. And I'm saying that because I think still at the end of the day, there are more of those 315 to 330 pound guys that can move around in the South than there is anywhere else in the nation. And I think more times than not, no matter what a Penn State or a Southern California might offer them, they want to stay in the South. So, but I do think the gap will be a lot closer. I mean, let's face it, over the past 20 years, it hasn't been close. Alabama's dominated. Georgia's come upon the scene. I think it's going to be a lot closer. Caleb, bank on it. The SEC will be the preeminent conference in college football in 5 years. Yeah or nay?
Nay. And I think the Big Ten has better leadership at the top. The SEC is a better brand. The SEC by far is a better brand. But Dave, you know this as well as I do. Sometimes the brand is immune to who's running it. For instance, people say Roger Goodell's a great commissioner because of how he's grown the NFL in popularity. No, he's not. You and I could have made the NFL that good. It's such a good product. It's almost impossible to screw up.
Yeah, you've got people lining up to do the NFL Sunday Ticket. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
They probably made a bad move signing that 20-year agreement with DirecTV. To be real honest with you, coming up this day or stat of the day coming up.
Well,
yes, go ahead.
Yes, I just had to point out, but the leadership of the SEC versus the Big Ten. Guys, I keep telling you guys this. Greg Sankey's experience is he was an engineering major, and then he worked in compliance with the league office. He's never had experience. He's taken over the SEC with no experience in media rights and things like that. Tony Petitti was a business major. He worked at MLB Network, helped launch that. He's launched multiple TV networks. Now he's working at the Big Ten. He understands the TV market better. He's not done outsmarting Greg Sankey. I'm just telling you guys that.
Show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up on the program, John Calipari. Why do we hate him? Why do you hate him? Is he the most hated coach in the history of Tennessee athletics? Lady Vols win. More after this. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. At 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back to the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Needless to say, plenty to talk about with the college football playoff ongoing. And it's time to talk a little bit of hoops. Caleb hinted at this in the last segment. The SEC may soon become a basketball conference. And part of that is keeping John Calipari in the conference. He goes from Kentucky to Arkansas. Now, whatever you think of John Calipari, you have to give him credit. He's fielding a championship-worthy team every year. Now, do I think he has the coaching acumen to get him to a championship the majority of the years? No, I do not. He has one. He should have 3 or 4 with the talent he's had, in my opinion. But he is a rather smug individual at times. Where would you put him in terms of coaches that Tennessee fans just all out can't stand, Caleb Calhoun?
I think in basketball, he's number 1. I think John Calipari is the most hated basketball coach for Tennessee fans in history. I don't know. You could go back further than me. I'm not sure if like any of the Kentucky coaches like Rick Pitino was that way. But like, I think John Calipari stands out above everybody of coaches Tennessee hates. Because remember, guys, he wasn't just at Kentucky for years, which Tennessee fans hate, but he was at Memphis at the peak of the Tennessee-Memphis basketball rivalry.
Yep.
And he would throw shots at Tennessee all the time during that time. One, he nixed the series for like 3 years, and he played this whole "we recruit national, Tennessee's beneath us." And the real truth was he didn't like Tennessee coming to Memphis to recruit Memphis kids.
So our poll question that's up now, okay, which coach do you dislike more? Calipari, Spurrier, Penny, who's at Memphis, who has definitely rubbed Rick Barnes the wrong way, or lastly, Jerry Green for his incompetence?
Well, it's funny because like,
are there times that you're proud of the questions I come up with?
I am very proud.
This was pretty damn good.
So the nostalgia of me, because like my first like foray into sports was like being a fan of the Shaq Penny Magic, and I never it was always still hard to hate Penny for that, even though he has been ridiculous at Memphis. I used to hate Spurrier as a kid, but I can't help but love him because I look back, I'm like, Steve Spurrier was just a better version of Lane Kiffin. I feel like it was just in terms of his needling and his poking fun.
I look back at it, and Spurrier was very entertaining. Now, I was in the media, so I was objective, and I felt like he was entertaining at the time. I realized that a lot of you didn't, and I understand. But right now, Spurrier was 62%. Penny with 25%, John Calipari 12%, Jerry Green hasn't gotten a vote yet, but just give him some time. Well, I'm telling you, go to the Kmart and rent a movie. Here's the thing that I think keeps Calipari off the list of most hated rivals or opposing coaches is because I don't think over time, Caleb, that Tennessee, for the most part, and Kentucky, or wherever Calipari's been, Memphis, now Arkansas, I don't think they've recruited the same guy. He's been going for the one-and-doner where that's not Rick Barnes' style, with the exception of what they did with Dalton Connect last year, which is a transfer.
There's also this factor. Oh, my Tennessee fans don't hate Calipari as much. Rick Barnes kind of owns John Calipari. I mean, Rick Barnes kind of handles him pretty well every year. So, I mean, when you take that into account, I think that honestly, look, I think if it was like, because I wonder, like, I wasn't around in the 90s, Dave, but like, did Tennessee basketball fans hate Rick Pitino, or were there Tennessee basketball fans that existed at that time? So did it matter?
I'll tell you, this sounds crazy, but I was on campus at the time, and there were days, evenings, that I was surprised to know that a basketball game was going on. It was like that. What's the word I'm looking for? Just, it wasn't even a thing. It wasn't like you were happy or sad that they won or lost because I was a student. It was like you didn't even know that they were playing. So it's kind of hard for me to say. I know that I was rubbed the wrong way when Rick Pitino said that Wade Houston, man, he deserves a lot more years. They're being unfair to him.
Oh, Lord.
He won 5 games the next year. I mean, I didn't like being played because I was a fan at the time. I was a student. I didn't like being played like I was some kind of fool. And that's why I didn't like Pitino. But I read Pitino's book, and it was good.
That reminds me of remember when Kevin Stallings was at Vanderbilt and Tennessee fans were not really happy with Cuonzo Martin for a year, and he's like, they're all idiots. They should want to stick with them. Now, Cuonzo wasn't a terrible coach, but it was like, yeah, I've never heard the minute your coach gets endorsed by opposing coaches to say he should keep his job, you don't have the right coach, because no one ever said, you're never going to hear Josh Heupel say, Georgia needs to stick with that Kirby Smart over there. He's really. You're never going to hear Josh Heupel say that whatsoever.
Work Truck's all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. Process quick and easy Choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership run around if you're a contractor. Got to know work trucks. Service industry, work trucks. Work trucks carries trucks that your business has to have. You need work trucks. For the entire inventory, go online, worktrucksllc.com. Don't risk your future on the wrong piece of equipment. Worktrucksllc.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. Work trucks with an XLLC.com. Okay, so let me ask you this. Kevin O'Neill was very disliked because he won games sometimes, I don't know if you're aware of this, 7-6.
Well, Kevin O'Neill, by the way,
who do you think Tennessee fan, maybe not hate's the right word, but he didn't leave in the middle of nowhere. So I'm curious on the message board because we don't have time to reset the poll question, but who do you dislike more in Tennessee basketball history? Is it John Calipari or Kevin O'Neill?
Real quick, we have to address this. The reason we're bringing this up, guys, is because Tennessee basketball opens SEC play tomorrow with the men's team against Arkansas and John Calipari. The Bowling Arena. I guess we should. Okay. I think everybody hated Kevin O'Neill, and I don't mean just Tennessee fans. Okay, Kevin O'Neill fat shamed a fan in Memphis one time. Like when Tennessee would play Memphis every year, there was this guy. He was kind of a known bigger guy that would sit near the front row, and he was kind of everybody knew him, and Kevin O'Neill just I'm real interested in that fat guy that goes to all the games.
You want to hear something? You want to hear something way worse?
What?
He had I'm not going to tell you who it is, but he had a player in the middle of practice that he liked to pick on. And he wasn't a very talented player, but he's one of my all-time favorites. And he thought it would be apropos to start calling that person's girlfriend names in order to motivate him. And I'm talking about the bad names.
Oh, my gosh.
That may refer to loose morals.
This sounds like him. He also...
Yes, the 4-letter word that starts with an S.
I know. Oh my God. Oh, he also, by the way,
and then made the guy run the steps the very same day.
He also, I do know the story where he messed up. One player played a really poor defensive game one time, and he said that's the last time I ever recruit a white guy again when he was at Tennessee.
I didn't know that one. All right, so changing gears a little bit, I want to get to the Lady Vols. The Lady Vols. Whew, I think they're a bright spot in this athletic department. What do you think about the Lady Vols to this point under Kim Caldwell, who just, I don't know, she seems to have it together. And I've been around pregnant women before, and that is not always easy. But man, I'm impressed. I wonder how that might affect her. But this program looks raring to go.
Oh yeah, they balled out. They beat Texas A&M on the road, 91-78. Thursday night. Texas A&M's not a great team, but they're 7-6 and on the road, and SEC basketball always counts for something. And they did it with elite 3-point shooting again. You know, I told you guys that Kim Caldwell, and I keep saying this, when she built this team at the beginning of the year, she was limited in how she could assemble her roster because she had to go with, she likes to run tempo and shoot the 3 ball. But at the SEC level, she was also going to need size. So she needed size, athleticism, and 3-point shooting. And she couldn't get it all, so she went for size and athleticism, banking on the idea that with more open looks from those two in her system, that 3-point shooting would improve. Well, it has. After setting an NCAA record for 3-point shots made in a game a week ago, they come out, start SEC play, going 10 of 23, 43.5% from 3. Jewel Spear was the star. She's from Texas, right outside of Dallas, and at College Station, went 6 of 8 from 3, scored 20 points. But the real story is on the glass. Tennessee had 21 offensive rebounds to Texas A&M's 9, and that's where the size and athleticism comes into play.
Let me ask you this. They make a change from Kelly Harper. They go to Kim Caldwell, and let's say the first day you heard her name. You don't know anything about her, okay? Just the Lady Vols in and of themselves making solid hires that you would hope they would make with the new person, Kim Caldwell. And this roster, when you looked at it, what did you think they were? Did you think they were an NCAA tournament team, win 1 game, Sweet 16, 8-4 championship? What did you think? And then don't tell me what you think now, because I want to get what you think now, and then I want to transfer to what I believe after watching this program.
I think Kim Caldwell, I think this program is, I'll just say it, you can say this about men's. I don't know if on the women's side you can say like the sexiest program in women's basketball. That just sounds a little, I think it sounds a little awful.
Sound bad?
I'm
sexy.
Okay. It is like, I mean it the way I would talk about a men's football program or basketball program. It's the sexiest program in women's basketball, guys, right now, because it is, you're talking about the most historically successful program, like the blue blood of women's college basketball, now being trendy and bringing in a new era and like being the up-tempo fun team. Danny White struck gold with the hire of Kim Caldwell. I mean, he struck gold.
Caleb, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that there's nothing sexy about men or women running up and down the court playing basketball. So if you want to call their style of play sexy, you're completely in the clear. Now, I mean, there's nothing, you play basketball. There's nothing cool about that. Bodying up against guys, especially if your shirts are skins, but they don't do that at the women's level. All right. So now was Caleb. I used to hate that. Did you not used to hate when you were shirts? It wasn't because I was fat. It was just because I didn't want to body up against others.
No, you don't want to body a dude on skins. Yes, it was like disgusting.
I don't want any part about that.
Apparently, right. You know that, by the way, Nick Saban would hold basketball like scrimmages with his staff in the all season, and it was always shirts and skins, but he never ever would be skins.
Of course not. You think if you and I played basketball, we had to be shirts and skins, that I'd be.
Yeah, well, Nick Saban was apparently he was a very competitive basketball player in the all season with his staff.
I'd say that dude is competitive when it comes to making great coffee. All right. So now what does Caleb think of the Lady Vols after seeing them so far this season? Has his prediction thoughts changed? Last look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Why Banks and Jones? And that's Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at CCTI.
All right, so Caleb, compared to your expectations pre-Caldwell, what do you think now of this Tennessee basketball? We'll check in on the poll question here momentarily. Give me some thoughts.
They have a potential to make an Elite Eight run, honestly. And I thought this was an NCAA tournament team. I see a potential Elite Eight team. And I mean, guys, we could be looking at a national title team in just 2 years. Look at her recruiting right now. She's loading up on the recruiting trail. This program is back, and it's back with a vengeance. And I think it's going to be, Tennessee UConn was the rivalry for a long time, but it was like it's two separate conferences, different parts of the region. Now with what South Carolina, what they're doing, Tennessee, South Carolina is about to become the biggest rivalry in women's college basketball. And that's going to be fun because South Carolina plays and dominates the way the Pat Summitt way, the old school way, defensive rebounding. Tennessee's dominating, even though they're the old school program, they're dominating, as you would say, Dave, the Nouveau Riche way. And
yes,
you know what it's like? You know what Tennessee's doing? You know what it's like? When Oklahoma, which was always a defensive, slow it down football team, hired Bob Stoops, and then they became an offensive juggernaut. They just started focusing solely on offense. Which is totally antithetical to what Oklahoma always was about. That's what Tennessee's kind of.
Somebody on the message board is saying that one of us needs to brush our teeth. I brushed my teeth this morning. Caleb, do you want to brush your teeth?
Yeah, but I'm rubbing my mouth off because I got a cold. So yeah, you know what? Sue me.
Oh, yeah, feeling good. All right, so. When it's all said and done, this Lady Vols team will do what, Caleb?
I'm going to stay Sweet 16 right now.
All right, that's kind of where I am too. I thought you might tweak it up. I didn't know that they were going to win more than one game in the NCAA tournament before I saw what Kim Caldwell has done. So it's exciting. It's going to be fun to watch. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Want to take a quick second. Caleb knows been a lot of drama in my life lately, so I just wanted to thank everyone for being a part of the program and being patient with me and knowing that great things are up ahead. So looking forward to the new year. Can't thank Caleb enough. Can't thank all of our listeners. We'll be with you weekdays at 10 a.m. I also want to thank all of our sponsors. And it's been a trek. But everything is looking up now, so everything's good. So for Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Greatly appreciate you, more than you'll know, being a part of this program, all of our listeners, and Caleb is an absolute godsend. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.